Cuba, the holiday destination of millions, or thousands at least, and this is Guantanamo Bay, the holiday camp from hell, as a number of former detainees have called it. Guantanamo Bay was acquired as a spoil of war by the United States and retained primarily to keep an eye on chaps like this and to see what Cuba were doing. But as they were spying on the Cubans, other things were happening, like the Supreme Court in the US handing down a decision that said that people detained by the United States abroad were not entitled to any rights under American law. So if you could say that you were keeping people somewhere that wasn't the United States, then essentially you could kind of do what you wanted with them. And this all became very handy when President Clinton was having to deal with the Haitian boat people, who he ended up detaining in Guantanamo Bay so that they wouldn't have any asylum rights because they had never strictly landed in the US. And it was a military camp where after a while they were just kind of doing nothing until 9/11 happened. And immediately the US administration decided that they would have to come up with somewhere that they could detain suspected terrorists. So where would they go? Well, a big collection of very smart people making very funny faces decided that they would think about Guantanamo Bay. You probably recognize most of these people, apart perhaps from Alberto Gonzalez up here, who was the Attorney General. So they decided that they would not refurbish Guantanamo Bay, but just pack lots of suspected terrorists into it. So we get our infamous orange jumpsuit photographs. We have military commissions built, and for the soldiers who are working there, we build a McDonald's. This is actually the Guantanamo Bay McDonald's. Mr. Razul is one of the first people detained there, and he tries to claim in the US Supreme Court that he has some kind of rights. Based on that old case, the administration says no, but the US Supreme Court says Guantanamo Bay isn't really like anywhere else outside of the US. We essentially own it, so you do have some rights, and this made some people very cross. Like Lindsey Graham, a Republican senator, who said, we can't allow this jail to run amok because of these pesky little human rights. We didn't give these rights to the Nazis, why would we give them to suspected terrorists? And so they passed a law to say the US Supreme Court couldn't have jurisdiction. Mr. Hamdan tried to challenge this and succeeded in the Supreme Court because he had lodged his case before they passed this act. Mr. Graham is still not very happy, and neither at this point is John McCain, who's thinking about a presidential run. So they get together and they pass another act which says, this time, Supreme Court, you really, really can't actually exercise any jurisdiction under statute or legislation. And so the Supreme Court, in a pretty unprecedented show of strength, said, OK, so we'll just apply the Constitution in the case of Boumediene. Why this matters is because then the rationale for Guantanamo Bay as a detention centre is gone. Bush doesn't care, he's off, Obama is in with the problem, including the fact that he had to be sworn in twice because the Chief Justice fluffed his words the first time. So Obama is sworn in as president, and one of his first acts is to sign an executive order saying, I am going to close Guantanamo Bay within a year. Some of the gentlemen standing behind him should already indicate the problems he was going to have, because they don't look particularly happy about this idea. What happens is McCain and Graham get together again to say this absolutely cannot happen, and protesters get together to try and build momentum around it, and poor President Obama is left looking pretty confounded. This gets even worse when the opinion polls start coming in. So in May of 2009, for example, 65% of people polled said he should not close Guantanamo Bay and move people into the United States. He still wants to close Gitmo, so what does he do? Well, he asks people like Minister Ahern, would they take some detainees? We took 2. He refurbishes the ironically named Camp Justice to look a little bit nicer and have proper beds for people who his own authorities say shouldn't be there, but who he can't send anywhere else because they might be tortured. And he said, they might be tortured somewhere else. And he decides that he wants to acquire this prison, the Thompson Correctional Facility in Illinois, which, as you see, is very pretty and very empty. And he wants to put people there. But Congress, now controlled by the Republicans, is extremely unhappy. When they authorize expenditure last year, they say not a single penny can be used to move anyone into the mainland United States from Guantanamo Bay. So, 10 years after it opens, President Obama has really no options. He says he's given up on it. Gitmo remains open, and if Sarah Palin becomes President Palin, it will remain open for quite a long time to come.